stream. We are dreamed into existence. What we do with that dream is up to us.
Come a little bit closer, hear what I have to say. Just like children sleeping, we could dream this night away. But there's a full moon rising, let's go dancing in the light. We know where the music's playing, let's go out and feel the night.
For the what of the dream knows itself through the how. It's a perfect time to be catching the stream together, because if there were any archetypal combination that related to catching the stream and flow of consciousness, it would be Neptune in relationship to Sun and Mercury. So I'm born with that aspect in a triple conjunction in Capricorn, and it's in the sky right now in a square alignment. So I'm really feeling the energy of the stream, and I'm hoping several streams come out of this particular waveform that we're in this week. Today, I want to go into repeating patterns in romantic relationships or significant relationships in our life, people that we really feel like we have karma with, a strong bond and connection. In previous streams, I've been going over repeating archetypal patterns within family systems, so seeing key combinations in our own chart and in that of our parents, or our children, or our siblings, seeing these repeating complexes coming through. And what I want to do today is I want to extend that even more horizontally out into the world, into key or primary relationships that we've been in throughout our life with people that we've had very strong attachments with. I'm going to be particularly focusing on romantic relationships, but what I'm saying most definitely applies to anyone where we just feel like we have a deep history with, a sense of kinship, or that there's just been a lot of gravitational pull between us and them. So when two beings, are magnetically drawn together in whatever way that relationship shows up, there is a primary attachment happening there. And what I'm about to share can be applied to any of those relationships. So an assignment that I had my students do in the Embodying Astrology course that I taught in 2015 and 2016 is I had them look at 5 to 10 of the most significant relationships in their life and study those people's birth charts. And then I had them journal on the recurring planetary combinations and archetypal themes of those significant relationships. So I'm going to give an example for myself, and then I'm going to give an example of my husband, Travis. He gave me his permission to do so. So hopefully these two examples will illuminate what I'm talking about here. So when we end up deeply drawn to somebody, usually what happens there is some kind of groove that we're hooked into. there's something very familiar about that person. And that can be from their personality to the way that they act, to the things that they like or are attracted toward, mannerisms they have. There's some felt sense of knowing them. It's often, for me, feels like a remembrance. There's like a hook that happens, and oftentimes a mutual recognition. Like, hey, I know you from somewhere, or we've done this before, or you remind me a lot of this other person in my life who was very influential. And there's some kind of chemistry that happens. And I often experience it initially as a repulsion and then an intense attraction for whatever reason. That's kind of my own particular dynamic. I think we each have our own version of that. For me, there can be a lot of hate and love kind of mixed up together. I even had it with my husband, Travis. Like when I first met him, I was not attracted to him, and I was kind of like, what's up with this guy? Who is he? What's happening over here? And it takes me some time. I'm Venus Saturn to slowly open up and connect and, get through my own judgments or my own blocks or barriers that might be there. And it's not infrequent that happens between myself and some of my dearest friends now. So it's just a process that I go through. And, eventually, obviously, I've ended up falling deeply in love with Travis and have nothing but absolute respect and admiration and love for him. But, there is kind of this push-pull dynamic in my being that takes place that comes from my own biography, my own history. But the point is that there was something deeply familiar about Travis. And now, personally, I come from a metaphysics that believes in reincarnation. And so I wholeheartedly feel in my being that Travis and I have had many, many lifetimes together, and that we are picking up in the middle of a very old story, ancient roots. And each lifetime that we meet, if we cross paths in that particular life, it's a remembrance, a quickening of awakening. And then I kind of feel like we're playing catch up. Like, hey, where you been? What did you learn? Where did you go? What have you been up to? Oh yeah, I did this. And I think that's often the case, especially for people who are soulmates of ours. Primary soulmates or like kind of associate soulmates, where Michael Newton goes into this kind of different types of soulmates, that there are people that we've been traveling with for eons. In his work, I think it's Destiny of Souls, which is a fascinating book to read if you haven't. So anyways, my metaphysics, need to fully own is a reincarnation metaphysics. And so oftentimes I think it's much more than, you remind me of this person, or you feel familiar because of X, Y, and Z. I think most of the time the person is familiar because we have had previous incarnations with them. So there's a history there. And at some point I would like to go into how I see the synastry and the composite charts between two beings, showing the karmic history between those souls, and both where those two souls have come from in their story together, but also the synastry showing the present moment and the potentiality of what's wanting to emerge in this current life, in the full, valence of expression, and the gifts and challenges that are seen in that connection between those two beings, and then the teleological unfolding of those two beings. So like the aim or the purpose, like what's the karmic contract here of the present moment and the future? Is there anything that these two beings, before they incarnated, agreed upon to meet up and work on, to activate or ignite in each other, positively or negatively? Not that I think that it can be reduced so much to positive and negative, but I think you know what I mean. And in that, sometimes we show up to challenge one another as much as, support one another. And so I think that the synastry shows both the karmic history and the present moment contract of what is being worked through and with. So that is for another stream. Right now I want to go into these recurring planetary combinations. So just how I gave examples in previous streams about, my mother and I sharing Venus-Saturn, or my father and I sharing Jupiter-Mars, Uranus, or how my maternal line all has either sun or moon, or oftentimes both, with Neptune. And so that's a very strong signature that goes far back on my maternal line. We can now apply that to our primary relationships and see that it's less so about us sharing those aspects with them, although that can be the case. It's more about seeing that there is a recurring archetypal theme through those primary relationships. So, for example, if I look at the 5 most significant romantic partnerships that I've been in my life, all 5 of those men have both Moon Saturn and Venus Uranus. And that can be in any aspect once again. So in this case, all of the men had Moon Saturn in hard aspect, so either conjunction or opposition or square, and all of them had Venus Uranus in hard aspect as well. And so what I like to do is, once we've discovered, taking those 5 to 10 most significant relationships of your life, and we find the recurring planetary combinations, then I like to play the game where I say, okay, so why is it that I am attracted to people who have both Moon Saturn and Venus Uranus? What is it about those combinations that is medicine for me this life? And I think that question is something each one of us can ask ourselves, and I think that the way we come to our various answers has a lot to do with understanding ourselves, both in our psychology but also our chart. So for me, if I look at it astrologically, I'm Moon Uranus and Venus Saturn. So we're swapping out. It's like essentially I'm attracted to the opposite of that in my partners. So whereas I have Moon Uranus, they have Moon Saturn. And whereas I have Venus Saturn, they have Venus Uranus. And so that's really important for me to notice and to reflect on. And it's really just more about taking the time to reflect and to be curious, kind of open up a contemplative state and asking, I wonder what that's about. So that would be from the astrological angle of it. And then we can ask the question from the psychological angle. So what is it that I know about Moon Saturn and Venus Uranus? How do those energies show up that I might be attracted to it? So before I kind of dive into more of the personal meaning of that for me, I want to call our attention to repeating patterns, right? I'm in the business of repeating patterns. That's what I do. I find repeating patterns both in the astrological charts that I look at and the transits I look at, but also I find repeating patterns in people's lives, in their relationships, in their work choices, in their behaviors. I mean, that's what I do. And a lot of times I think that we can have the well-intentioned but mistaken idea that falling into our patterns is a bad thing. Like, oh no, I'm doing that pattern again. Oh no, this is my pattern. Oh no, I'm attracted to that same type of person again. I'm doing my pattern. Listen, pattern is what we do. Pattern is who we are. Pattern is what the world is made up of. The world is made up of patterns and cycles. And I know that for me, cycles and the cycles of life and the cycles of the planets and the cycles of relationships are how the universe, I believe, keeps track of itself. I think that in order for there not to be just utter chaos and randomness, patterns are the way that the universe structures itself in order for creation to take form. Now, that's a little meta perspective there. If we bring it down to earth a little bit more, I really actually appreciate the work that my husband Travis has done around symbolic repetition, where he goes in and he really looks at symbolic repetitions in the chart, and he's like, look, repetition is actually a beautiful form and expression of creation. So Saturn is the repetition, and Uranus is the novelty that can come out of that repetition. And he goes into examples with, let's say, playing jazz music, that there's the repetition of keeping time, but then there's the free form improvised music that comes out of that agreed upon repetition of keeping the time. And so it's actually through repetition that we are able to create and to play and for novelty to be expressed. And I think the same analogy can be applied to our individual lives when we are looking at romantic relationships, that there are patterns that we all participate in that are inescapable, but the way that we relate to that recurring pattern can change. And so new forms of being and expression can come out of those repeating patterns. So I want us to try and see if we can reimagine and reframe a bit falling into our patterns. So my example here with Moon Saturn is, as someone who is, Sun Neptune and can be quite boundless in my identity and have a tendency to merge, when the closer we become, the more we merge. I have, a profound sense of empathy and compassion, and I can, have a loss of identity. I can really become one with whatever it is that I'm interacting with. And so whether that's reading a book and entering into that world, or meeting with a client and entering into their world, feeling deeply what it is that they're experiencing, or being in romantic relationship and really taking on that person's values, or that person's mannerisms, or the way that they are, the way that they think. It's just a natural part of who I am. As a Sun Neptune person, I have less of a boundary around my sense of self and ego. I'm very permeable and impressionable. And the beautiful side of that is that it does give me my compassion and my empathy, and allows me to feel deeply with whoever I'm with. Or, Travis being a musician, since we've gotten together, music has become so much more a part of my life, and I'm so grateful for that. Not only with him playing music all the time, but also me joining in. And I see this happen with every significant person in my life, that who they are and what they're interested in also becomes woven into my being. And there's a depth of the unconscious that is shared between us. So it's extra important for me to be really mindful and conscientious about who I spend time with in intimate space, because I do take on that person's, or I can, their qualities or their feelings or their perspectives. And so it would make sense that I would be attracted to people who have Moon Saturn, which can show up as being much more boundaried in their relationship. Saturn being the boundary and the lines that are drawn, and the moon being the interpersonal field, the relationships, the home life. And I know that with Travis, it's been so helpful for me to be with him being Moon Saturn, because it's such medicine for me. He's taught me so much about the gifts of being able to draw boundaries in relationships. He's helped me become much more contained in my emotions. he's helped me learn to compartmentalize in a healthy way so that I can have more of a choice of how much energy and time I give to a feeling I'm having or an experience that I'm having, how to be able to take care of myself and be a good parent to myself in terms of the Saturn showing up as helping the lunar child part of me say, hey, it's okay. I see you. Everything's fine. You're safe. Everything's just fine. How about you go play your flute for a little while now, or let's go take a walk, or let's take a break from this, and get some fresh air and come back to it with a fresh set of eyes, right? So the Moon Saturn medicine can be really a healing balm, a good counterbalance to the Sun Neptune, boundlessness that I can be in, which I love that part of me, absolutely love that part of me, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. Sometimes it's too much information that I'm receiving from the outside world. Sometimes my channel is too open and I'm taking on too much of other people's energy and losing touch with my own center. And that hurts me and it's not helpful. And so it makes sense to me that I'm attracted to people who have Moon Saturn. But as we know, there are many ways to express any archetypal combination. And so there's many ways to express the Moon Saturn. And when I was younger and naturally more immature, I was drawn to men who had Moon Saturn where there were still gifts in it and I still learned a lot. But they tended to be more emotionally moon cut off Saturn from themselves, where there was actually more of an emotional distance that they had in their own being and therefore in their ability to be intimate with me. And so I often felt emotionally abandoned in those relationships where my needs weren't being met and I didn't really feel totally safe to be myself and to relax and to let go. And so what can happen with men who have Moon Saturn and are in a relationship with a woman is that the moon, because it relates to female figures in our lives, maternal figures in our lives, and feminine figures in our lives, that woman can take on the Saturnian qualities of becoming more controlling or rigid in the relationship, right? Like critical or nagging or feeling like they're being oppressive or strict toward the partner. And I think that that definitely is something that I can do when my Venus Saturn doesn't feel safe. And I go into the Venus Saturn in a YouTube video that I made on Venus Saturn, an aspect that you can find on my channel, Jessica DiRuzza, that really goes into this, but that essentially when in romantic relationship or friendship, Venus, when the Saturn piece, when there isn't a clear social contract and the person doesn't feel safe, the tendency for Saturn to come through in that super ego form, like hypercritical or hyper rigid or hyper judgmental, it's usually an indication of the person being out of balance and not being comfortable. And so it can be a reaction and a defense mechanism to protect oneself. And I think that when I was younger, that Venus Saturn part of me did come through where I would kind of, take the path of being like the parent in the relationship, like overly responsible and overly kind of in control or in charge of what was happening. And then the male partner got to take more of the lunar aspect of being the child. And so there was a splitting happening there where they got to carry the moon and I got to carry the Saturn. And that just innately is going to create a power struggle, because whenever we have a splitting like that happening in our psyche, that is really defines the relationship dynamics between the two people. That is set up for failure, because that's just not how it works. If they get to be the one that's the young child or youthful or playful or, kind of more in a regress state, then naturally the Saturn has to go to the other person, and then they can become, again, hyper critical and rigid and over authoritarian and oppressive. So I didn't understand that when I was, 16, 20, 25. It took me a while to really realize what was going on there. And there's reasons why I was attracted to people like that from my own biography, which we can always find these patterns in our adult life romantically traced back. It makes sense. Like, my dad wasn't a part of my life. He left around the age of 4, and I was in a lot of ways parentified, and so I grew up very quickly in a lot of ways. And when I was young, I was always revered as like, you are so wise, or wow, you're way older than you seem, or you're an old soul. And as complimentary as that was when I was a kid, I also see the shadow side of that, which is there was something lost a bit there in my youth and getting to be the child fully. And I think I became over-identified with being in more of a parental role. And so I would take on that kind of dynamic in my partnerships, before I got into therapy and really understood more what was happening there. And the reason why I woke up to it was because it was really painful for me. It was very difficult because I often felt very alone in my relationships, which you can see with the Venus-Saturn, just feeling really isolated and cut off from love. And of course, that was my own self-love that I was cut off from for a time there. And then naturally that would show up in being cut off from that love in my relationships. And I think that when you add in that, also what I was attracted to in my partners was the Venus-Uranus, which, is just this absolute love of the wild, free spirit. The men that I'm attracted to are often have a very strong creative side to their personality, and they tend to be revolutionary or avant-garde in their expression. And we know that the shadow side of Uranus can be like that juvenile, when it's immature, just like juvenile delinquency. And so, yeah, it did show up as both the artist. I've been with people, one of my significant partners was an amazing painter, really phenomenal painter. And, Travis is a musician, plays bass and sings and does all kinds of actually really cool improvisational music. And yet, and so it works because my moon Uranus, my relational style and my intimacy style is actually one that is very playful, very trickstery, very fun. I love humor and wit and banter, and I love to be physically expressive, and I love to dance, and I just really love movement, and I love adventure. I really feel at home there, and so it makes sense, and I'm attracted to these men that carry this Venus-Uranus, free love, open love, again, free spirit, but where the Uranian principle is coming in and liberating and awakening beauty and love. And, I love the wild. I love it. I love what emerges from spontaneity. I love not knowing what's going to happen in every moment. It's fun for me. And when I was younger, like I said, that pattern, though, could show up. It could be a lethal combination. If the man was emotionally cut off from his own needs, and then therefore was emotionally cut off in our relationship, he was out of touch and very far away from me. And then he also had that wild, sometimes crazy spirit, really living on the edge. It could feel dangerous. It could just feel like so unpredictable and so unwieldy that, where is this going? And so as I grew and as I began to understand myself better and understand what I needed, what I wanted, and as I went on my own path of self-discovery and healing through astrology and psychology and being in therapy and doing medicine work and being surrounded by really good, awesome, loving, supportive people in my life, I began to understand what these patterns were. And so when I got to Travis and I saw, wow, these patterns are happening again, but look, the way that Travis embodies the Moon Saturn and embodies the Venus Uranus is so different than my previous partners. Travis is so much more grounded and centered and wise, and just really has a beautiful side of Moon Saturn, which is such a deep ethic of care. He really shows up in such, I believe, a moral way in his intimate relationships, right? The moon is our family. It's our closest relationships. And one of the things that attracted me to Travis from the beginning, once I got through my initial, what's up with this guy, was seeing the way that he treated the people who were closest to him, that he would always do what he said. He had follow through. He always listened. He always had space for how that person was feeling and to hear them out. And so the Saturn was showing up in a really grounded, wise way for the moon. And it was very nurturing. And I said, geez, no matter what happens between us, I know that he would treat me the same way that I see him treating these other people. And then in combination with that, I saw the Venus-Uranus as, oh my gosh, he's so expressive and so creative. I mean, he's trained in classical music, but also improv jazz. And I just love that analogy of improvisational improv jazz. In order to be a bassist and keep that root beat, you have to be able to play well with others, listen deeply, go with the flow, and be spontaneous. And when it's your turn to self-express, to have the courage to do so. And those are all qualities I deeply admire in people, especially my partner. And Travis carries those qualities. And so this example is to illustrate how it's completely normal. It's natural for the patterns to repeat. The hope is that as we continue to evolve and grow in our own lives, tending to ourselves, tending to our own growth process, our own healing process, that naturally comes with self-discovery and self-love, is we begin to be able to interface and interact with the outside world and the people who come into our life in a new way. And so there is novelty there. There is a new form of expression, which not only gives me so much hope, but a deep faith in the process. And I'm reading A Wrinkle in Time right now, and just one line in it that I'm surprised I hadn't heard before, which is, faith is the sister to justice. And I really feel that, having the faith in where our path, our journey leads us, I believe does bring us to justice. And for me, the things that I had suffered in for so long in my romantic relationships, because I really took the time to understand what was going on there and take the time to do what I could to work on those things inside of myself, the justice of, really the poetic justice of meeting Travis and being with someone who is so emotionally solid and grounded and yet completely fun has just been the greatest gift to me in my life. And I think that when we all take a closer look, we can see this. So I've worked with dozens of people around this particular exercise, and there wasn't a single one who didn't come out saying, oh yeah, look at this repeating theme. So I want to encourage you, whenever you're ready, to take a look and see what you find. And what I really want to invite you to do, if you choose to do this exercise, is to just notice your response to finding those repeating patterns. Just noticing, does it make you happy? Does it make you sad? Does it make you scared? Does it make you hopeful? Like, just noticing that could already give us so much information. And I really, really want to encourage you with this and with everything that I offer to be as gentle with yourself as possible around it. Because when we're working with something that's so activating as astrology is, right? It's an amplifier of consciousness. When we amplify something, everything gets bigger in it, the good and the bad. And so we just want to be as gentle and as loving with ourselves when we get activated. And just notice, oh, how's my body feeling right now? How are my emotions? What thoughts am I having? Am I entering into a reverie state? Are there any memories here? And that can actually tell us a lot about what it is we're discovering, and usually has a strong correlate to the actual aspects that we find. So I'm just gonna, I said I was gonna give the example of Travis, but I'm feeling like I just said a lot, and I'm trying to keep these streams in bite-sized pieces. So I think I'm going to pause there and be very excited to catch more of this Sun, Mercury, Neptune energy for the rest of this week when it's possible. And I wanted to say it's been so lovely for me to hear from all of you who've reached out to me, sent me messages, and shared with me your experience of listening to stream. It's just been so delightful for me to hear from you and to feel you out there. And what I've really loved is the streams that it's opened up for each one of you. And so, I hope more than anything that when you listen to these streams, that it's more about a feeling that you're having, going into your own reverie, going into your own stream and seeing where it takes you on your journey, and maybe a little less so about the content, although I do love that too. But I really am hoping that it's conveying a certain feeling state for you. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate it a lot, and I'm super excited to be on this journey with each of you. This is Stream, and I'm Jessica DiRuzza.
When we were strangers, I watched you from afar. And when we were lovers, I loved you with all my heart. But now it's getting late, and the moon is climbing high. I wanna celebrate, see it shining in your eyes. Because I'm still in love with you, I wanna see you dance again. Because I'm still in love with you on this harvest moon. Because I'm still in love with you, I wanna see you dance again. Because I'm still in love with you on this harvest moon.